Ever scroll through Twitter and just like feel this weight of opposing opinions, Like you're watching a car crash in slow motion.
Yeah.
Or those news cycles totally consumed by power grabs. It's enough to make Machiavelli scratch his head.
For sure.
Which is why today's deep dive is kind of like unearthing the OG rulebook for this whole crazy game we call society. We're talking Thomas Hobbes, specifically his Leviathan.
Hobbes. Famous or infamous maybe for a pretty bleak outlook on what we're like as humans, not to mention some strong takes on how we should be governed.
Exactly. It's a tough read, no doubt, but what's wild is how relevant it still feels almost 400 years later. We're going to unpack why this book still sparks debate, whether it's in a classroom or, let's be real, some corner of the internet.
And we'll do it without making you decipher pages of 17th century writing.
Think of this as your cheat sheet to Hobbesian wisdom.
I like that.
So where does Hobbes even begin? Picture this. He compares us, humans, to machines.
Okay.
Not just any machines, but these intricate clockwork things driven by internal springs. And those springs, those are our desires.
Interesting. What's fascinating there is Hobbes wasn't just being artsy with his language. He genuinely thought the universe, us included, worked like one giant mechanism.
Wow.
This idea, shaped by the science of his day, is like the foundation his whole philosophy is built on.
So he's saying our motivations, our actions, it's all cause and effect, like gears and levers doing their thing.
Exactly. And if we buy that we're all just machines driven by these predictable forces, well, then you need something equally powerful to stop us from, well, turning on each other.
Right, because machines can malfunction, break down.
Exactly. And that is where Leviathan enters the picture.
The Commonwealth, the state, envisioned as this massive artificial man, its whole purpose, to bring order to the chaos that Hobbes believes is basically humanity's default setting.
And it's a powerful image, right? This monstrous figure built from the very individuals it aims to control.
And at the heart of it all, controlling its every move. That's the sovereign. Hobbes even calls the sovereign the artificial soul of Leviathan.
That choice of words, it's very deliberate. It highlights how much Hobbes believed in absolute rule. Not democracy, not sharing power, but pure centralized authority. The kind of power needed to keep all those little human machines in check.
So we've got people as machines fueled by desires, and this looming Leviathan there to stop those desires from turning the world into utter mayhem. But why does Hobbes think we're so prone to chaos in the first place? Well, that's where his ideas about human nature come in. And let me tell you, they're not for the easily offended.
You know, people hear Hobbes, and it's all Leviathan, this big, scary sovereign, right?
Right.
But they miss that his whole theory, it's built on this deep dive into us, into human nature.
So he's like, hold up, before we even talk government, we got to figure out what makes people tick.
Exactly. And he doesn't send us off to, like, find ourselves on a mountaintop. He says, read thyself.
He's not talking about those self-help books, is he?
Not quite. Hobbes wants us to be ruthless, honest, really look at what we desire, why we do things.
So no inspirational quotes for the fridge, then?
Not really. Hobbes is after the raw code of human action, you see.
Yeah.
For him, it all boils down to two things: desire and aversion.
Desire and aversion.
Yeah, we're drawn to stuff, pleasure, power, feeling safe. And then we're pushing away from things, pain, loss, especially death. It's like a constant pull and push.
Okay, and this is where that whole machine analogy comes back in. Like, our desires are those internal springs winding us up, pushing us toward what we crave.
Exactly. And here's the real kicker. He says these desires, they're not unique to you or me. They're universal, like hardwired into what makes us human.
So we're all these desire-driven machines bumping around. How does that lead us back to needing a Leviathan?
Okay, so imagine. No rules, no laws, nobody saying this is mine or don't even think about it.
Sounds kind of fun for a minute.
Right. But that's Hobbes' state of nature. Everyone out for themselves, driven by self-preservation, those insatiable desires. Conflict is inevitable.
Like everybody fighting over the last slice of pizza.
Yeah.
Except the stakes are a bit higher.
Way higher. We're talking basic survival.
Yeah.
It's a war of all against all, as he put it.
Catchy.
And in this state, life, it is, and I got to quote him here because it's just so bleak, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
Not the kind of world you'd want on a postcard.
Nope. And that right there, that's the nightmare Hobbes says we need the Leviathan to avoid. That absolute power, that external force. We need it to regulate us, create some order from the chaos. ultimately to stop us from destroying ourselves.
So we give up some individual freedom, but we get security in return, a chance to not have a life that's brutish and short.
Exactly. Now, this idea of a social contract, trading some liberty for stability,
Yeah.
it's not unique to Hobbes. But the amount of power he gives the sovereign to enforce it, that's where things get really interesting. And it's a debate that's still going on today, how much power is too much.
Okay, so we've established Hobbes wasn't exactly writing greeting cards with his view of human nature, right?
Sure.
He definitely saw the need for some strong leadership, to say the least.
Right.
But how does this social contract thing actually play out in real life? It can't just be a free-for-all where the sovereign makes the rules and everyone blindly follows.
Well, not exactly. See, Hobbes argues that escaping that state of nature, that chaos, it requires giving up some power. Think of it like this. In the state of nature, yeah, you've got total freedom, but zero security.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. It's a constant battle just to survive.
Kind of like trying to find a parking spot downtown on a Saturday.
Exactly. So to get away from that chaos, people collectively agree. We give up some of our freedom to a higher power, to the sovereign.
Right, because, I mean, even a scary crossing guard is better than just dodging cars all day.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's like we're saying, okay, you set the rules, you make sure nobody breaks them, and in exchange, we promise to not, start a brawl over who gets the last parking spot. That agreement.
Yeah.
That's Hobbes' social contract.
Sounds pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing with Hobbes and his thing for absolute power, there are some fine print details in this contract.
You're catching on. Hobbes thought for this social contract to work, the sovereign's power, it couldn't be wishy-washy. Had to be absolute.
Absolute meaning like no questions asked.
Pretty much. And indivisible.
Indivisible meaning what exactly?
No splitting the power between different branches of government like we see a lot today. Hobbes thought that just leads to disagreements and weakens the sovereign, makes it harder to enforce laws. And remember, Hobbes lived through some rough times in England, a lot of civil unrest. He'd seen firsthand how bad things get when a society basically can't agree on who's in charge.
So he figures it's better to have one ruler, even if they're not perfect, than risk everyone fighting amongst themselves.
That was his logic. Truly believed even a not-so-great sovereign was better than a full-blown civil war. And to keep everything running smoothly, Hobbes had some very specific ideas about what the sovereign should be in charge of.
Okay, like what? Hit me with it.
Well, first off, the sovereign defines and enforces justice.
Makes sense.
Because remember, in the state of nature, there is no right or wrong. Just people going after what they want.
It's a free-for-all.
Exactly. Justice only exists when someone breaks a contract. And under the Leviathan, the big contract is the social contract itself.
So basically, being just means keeping your word, holding up your end of the bargain you made when you signed up for this whole Leviathan-run society.
You got it. But there's more. Hobbes also thought the sovereign should control how laws are made known and understood. And this is where his love of order really shows.
How so?
He was adamant that laws had to be clear, easy for anyone to understand. Ignorance is no excuse to break the law, according to Hobbes.
Seems fair enough.
Right. But it tells us a lot about how he saw the world. He didn't like anything that was up for interpretation or could be taken multiple ways. He wanted crystal clear rules, no room for confusion. Because for Hobbes, that was the key to keeping things running smooth and preventing disagreements.
No reading between the lines when it comes to Hobbesian law.
Not if you don't want to end up on the wrong side of the Leviathan. And while we're on the topic of stuff, Hobbes thought the sovereign should control. Let's not forget religion.
Ah, yes, religion. He wasn't exactly a fan, was he? He even called it a kingdom of darkness.
He did. He saw religion as a powerful tool, something that could control people, but also something that could cause conflict, make things unstable.
Because if everyone's running around thinking their idea of God's will is the right one, it's going to cause problems.
Exactly. So Hobbes, always a fan of keeping things simple. His solution: the sovereign controls religion.
Not exactly separation of church and state, is it?
Not even close. Not that the sovereign would dictate beliefs, but they'd control how those beliefs were expressed, Made sure no single religion challenged their authority.
So let me get this straight. We've got a sovereign, all-powerful, upholding the social contract. They decide what's just, they control the laws, and they're keeping a tight rein on religion. That's a lot.
It is a lot to digest, and it's important to keep in mind Hobbes was writing in a very specific and pretty turbulent historical moment.
So while his ideas might seem kind of extreme now, they came from a very real fear of chaos. He really wanted stability.
Absolutely. And while we might not agree with everything Hobbes said, his work makes us think. What is power? What's the role of government? How do you balance freedom and security?
Yeah,
These are questions we're still wrestling with today, aren't we?
for sure. Makes you think next time you're on Twitter feeling overwhelmed by, well, everything. Remember Hobbes and his Leviathan?
It's a good reminder that even with all our modern conveniences and technology, those basic questions, how do we coexist? Who's in charge? How do we prevent things from falling apart? They never really go away, do they?
Nope, they really don't. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Be sure to check out our show notes for more on Hobbes and the Leviathan. And until next time, keep asking those tough questions and stay curious.